president, the Senate is dealing with the vice president, who should be in a position where we're actually having issues of that. But also, let's not forget that when you are actually dealing with the birds of a feather, they usually flock together. But when these birds are mixed in the wrong direction, they actually don't work together. And what makes the birds to fly together is the vision which they commonly share. Now, if a vision is very clear, in Umozi we want everybody to be united, I cannot see anybody getting in that political party and not be united because it devalues the concept of Umozi. But if the idea is the fact that I should be able to prosper when my colleagues are not prospering and therefore we're using a system of state, then obviously that's the issue. What makes a problem, from my understanding, is lack of listening, lack of understanding, and lack of understanding the pain of other people when you're actually in power. In other words, the ability for a leader to be patient, caring, and understanding, which Malawi has missed so far, which has resulted in the chaos. Couple that with the fact that the democracy which we inherited from Kamuzu did not have a vice president, created all sorts of problems. And I think these things to be managed now and looked at holistically. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now hear from Petra. There was an indication from Professor Chisi that lack of listening can be a challenge. Mr. Chiwambu, can you pick it up from there? Are you a listening president?
Well, throughout my political life, I've endeavored to be a listening person. Indeed, in the country, we have this problem that sometimes presidents feel that they are only accountable to themselves. This has happened in this country. There have been lots of outcries from time to time on specific issues like issues of handouts, president going out to give out handouts worth 3 million kwacha, but the cost of taking those handouts is well over 10 million kwacha. But, and then all you hear is defiance from the president. So this has proved to be a big problem in Malawi. But as a presidential candidate, I would like to promise the people of this, not just to promise, but I think I've demonstrated that I can be a listener. I can listen to what people say. I remember in 2004, there was the issue that we should come together as political parties and form a bloc, which we did. And we supported one presidential candidate. Petra fully participated in that. Now, let me come to the issue of the presidency dumping the political party that sponsored them. This is a problem that has been registered in Malawi, and it is bad for democracy, for a president to dump a political party that sponsored him or her. So we need to introduce a law that stops a president who has been elected on a particular ticket, party ticket, that he or she cannot dump the party that sponsored them. Coming to the position of vice president. The position of vice president is a constitutional provision. It's a constitutional position. And as a lawyer, I fully understand the importance of having constitutional positions. And one way of safeguarding, again...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Malawi Congress Party.
Let me pick on from the previous speaker's insistence on constitutionalism. Malawi Congress Party believes in constitutionalism. The convention that was conducted last year was not predetermined. You could not tell who would win. In fact, the convention itself would not allow for last-minute amendment to allow the incumbent president to stand. And when I was elected, and the first vice president was elected, we began to work together and to share a vision that would help Malawi develop. What has happened is that most times presidential candidates have gone outside their party structures to pick on somebody else as a running mate, when actually in their party, they have structures that have positions. Malawi Congress Party believes that we must create trust between a president and a vice president. And that is the reason I chose Richard Msoya to be my running mate, so that we can begin to practice intra-party politics, that will be reflected on a higher level when we take the presidency May 20th. And therefore, we need to understand that some of these problems that have a history to it, these are the ones that have actually contributed to producing what has become known as recycled politicians. People that move from one party to the other, wear one color, shout another slogan today, in order for them to stay in politics. We say nothing of that sort should happen in Malawi Congress Party.
Thank you. UIP, tell us what preservative will keep you going.
Thank you very much. I agree to some extent with MCP, except that he himself has not been in the party a long time, so that argument didn't hold much water. As for the United Independence Party, I have a running mate who has been my assistant for the last 13 years or so. We've worked together. I know her thoroughly. I can trust my life in her hands. I don't expect her to renegade on me. So the issue of my vice president becoming obsolete during the term of office is neither here nor there. Further to that, I believe that the constitution of the party safeguards that position, and also the constitution of the land. This constitution of Malawi has been totally trashed by the previous ruling parties. They've ignored it, they've debased it, they've brought the nation down to lawlessness, and that's why you have situations where a vice president can be totally ignored when it is a constitutional position, because within parliament, their own MPs can cross floors and go to court and get an injunction to continue doing the wrong. I believe that you reap what you sow. So if you reap lawlessness, you will. If you sow lawlessness, you will reap lawlessness. I don't believe that any member of parliament should go to court and stop parliament from functioning according to the constitution. But this is what has happened with the previous parties. And hence you have the problems that you do have intra-party.
Thank you. Nassaf?
You know, I will compare Malawi intra-party democracy to a football club. Malawi way of politics, the way they think is that in this football club, this striker must be a relative, must be from this region, must be family. The other members have to play a supporting role. Whether the striker is left-footed or is handicapped, it doesn't matter. So the insistence of having a family member, be the torchbearer, be the striker, be the goal scorer, is a problem. It's predetermined. Another thing is money. The one who has got the most money becomes the leader of the party because of patronage. Let's take to the position of vice president. Vice presidents in Malawi, they are kind of like a window dressing because the presidents choose somebody weaker than themselves. We're a very insecure society. We tend to believe that being different means bad. We're the only people who punish people for thinking differently. We want to think like an orchestra. Let's dance to one tune, forgetting that even an orchestra has different tunes, but they work together in harmony. So in NASAF, we believe that different does not mean bad. It's actually a sign of strength, diversity. That's why I chose Mrs. Ethel Changa as my running mate, vice president, a lady from Nsanje, able, qualified, competent, who can step into the office of president in a moment's notice. So as NASAF, we're a very, very secure party. Thank you.
Thank you. But then how do you ensure that you walk the long haul together? Because beginning is easy, but sticking together forever in the lifetime of the party for as long as you can be in those positions has proved very difficult for Malawi.
I'm on record. The last election I contested, but I conceded defeat. I was the second to do so. I didn't fight, I didn't protest, I didn't whine. I'm not a whining person. I'm secure. That's a fact. I'm a man who supports good ideas. For instance, Malawi Congress Party, for the record, they're the only political party who have practiced genuine intra-party democracy. I can say it openly. I'm that kind of person. Whereby the others will say, if I say this, I'm campaigning for them. I'm not like that.
Thank you. This Inter-Alliance?
Mafunde and the Tista Alliance are in a very privileged position in that we have another chance to choose a vice president. And I should assure the nation that will not disappoint you. I would like to agree with the Honorable Kasonga that if there is no intra-party democracy, we cannot have democracy with a party that's running the nation. So that has to start from the party. In Mafunde, we got a very substantive chairperson and a vice chairperson who run the party. So the president or the vice president cannot make decisions without referring to the leaders of the parties. I do agree that we have had problems with the vice president, and it's an issue that we need seriously to look into. From these lessons, we need to look at the constitution. Mafunde would ensure that the vice president is given a substantive ministry so that he functions. It's a waste of resources to have a vice president that is doing nothing and at the end of the term earns a substantial pension. In terms of the president dumping his party, I think we will need to look at the same scenario that we have with members of parliament. If a president dumps the party, he needs to go back and get a mandate of the people rather than continue running the country under a different party, because that is cheating. I'll go further to say that in terms of Section 65 with parliamentarians, we propose that the parliament should have its own legal team rather than rely on the Attorney General, because if there's a conflict between the executive and the parliament, then the Attorney General leans towards the government rather than the parliament, and that's why the injunctions have been lifted. Similarly, we expect that the judiciary should have its own legal team so that if there's a conflict between any parts of the government, each team should be able to take up the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. DPP?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me say that the Democratic Progress Party is very democratic, as the name indicates. Somebody suggested that maybe I'm the best person to answer the question of a president leaving his own party. I think that trust or honor was misplaced, because I've never belonged to any other party other than the DPP. I'm one of founding members, and I'll die as a DPP member. So that issue is misplaced. Now, on the issue of intra-party democracy, I think it's very, very important indeed that we should have democracy within parties. Part of the problem is that I think we are a new democracy. We're only 20 years old, and we're trying to figure out how our democracy should actually function. As one of the framers of the Constitution, I'm aware that there are many problems in our present Constitution also, which need to be addressed. And I'm hoping that we'll have another review of the Constitution to add to the 2007 Constitution. Now, on the question of a president leaving his party or her party, I think there are two conflicting ideas here. One, of course, the idea of freedom of association. Everyone is free to join a party or leave it. And of course, the idea of loyalty and the commitment. So to balance the two and see how that's going to work. Now, I think one of the problems of inter-party democracy is the question of funding. That normally two problems, one, the big man syndrome, and second, the funding. I think in Africa, we still have this big man syndrome going back to the colonial days, the Kenyattas, the Nyereres, the great leaders of this century, Kwame Nkrumahs, were revered. So we have that big man syndrome. Very, very difficult to challenge a leader of the party. I think those were our tradition. We have our chiefs.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Mutharika, Mr. Nyonva alluded to the fact that often a challenge we have in our political system is a presidential candidate perhaps picking on relations, to be part, perhaps, successors and so on and so forth. And I'm sure that perhaps you are a case in point because you are a brother to the late Bingu. Would you want to assure Malawians that you are the right choice for the DPP?
It's a very interesting question. I must say that people don't know this, but actually my brother was opposed to my being a candidate for almost 8 months. In fact, it took Peter Chiona, who was a member of my Congress party, who wrote a 10-page letter after seeing me at a convocation at MIM that he thought I was presidential material. But my brother was opposed to that, but eventually he supported me now. Let me talk about the idea of vice president, that vice president is an endangered species in Southern Africa.
Sorry, your time is up. Right. Thank you. That was Professor Peter Mutharika, concluding the first segment of our debate, where we were focusing on intra-party democracy, particularly as we looked at the tendency of presidents to abandon the party that sponsored them into power and forming their own. All this in the 2014 presidential debate coming your way live from Hotel Victoria in Blantyre. Funso lathu lachiwiri lili mu chichewa ndipo tikufuna tione amene angatiyambire kuyankha funso limeneli. Funso limeneli oyamba kuyankha akhala Friday Jumbe.